Now, one thing before we go ahead and start, I'm going to warn you guys that this is a very, very guided conversation. You're going to be a little bit uncomfortable with how quickly I cut you off and move on to the next person, how quickly we move through this. You'll see in a little bit here when I get to the slides about how we do this. Each one of these 10 steps is timed at about 15 minutes each, and there's a lot of us, so we're going to have to move quickly. I'm going to start here by setting myself 15 minutes to give an overview of both Sustainable Tallahassee, why I'm here, why I'm interested, and the strategic doing in the process. So the first thing I want to start with is why are we here? Why does Sustainable Tallahassee exist, right? Why is each one of you sitting here at this table? And one of the beautiful things about Sustainable Tallahassee is that it's all of these things, right? So we have up here, I just went through just yesterday, quick Google image search for climate change. And we got all of these variety of things, right? We have recycling, we have wildfires, we have ice caps melting, right? It's all related in some way to climate change, to sustainability, to environmental awareness. And then also it's related to economic development, right? Because we can't address any one of these things without also addressing the social aspect of it, the social and the economic aspect of it, right? The three pillars of sustainability. And so that results in what's called a complex problem. A complex problem is when you can't do anything without affecting something that's very much related to systems thinking, like Sean mentioned earlier. Sustainable Tallahassee works on this complex problem of sustainability. We do it in a lot of different ways, right? I like electric cars. Peggy likes waste reduction through sewing rags to bags, right? Lizette works on local community gardens and local foods, right? Strawberry Tallahassee, trees, electric cars again, right? Everybody has their one passion. Well, everybody has their one passionate project they want to be here for. But part of our issue is that not everyone is passionate about every single one of these things. And we couldn't possibly be, right? We would never sleep. If I worried about every single one of these things on a daily basis, constantly, I'd never be able to do anything. I'd be paralyzed by the overwhelming nature of the problem. But this is why I'm actually really here. And I know many of you are looking at this, what is this? What does this have to do with why Mike's here? I know a lot of you know me, and you know that I have an electric car. I have a Tesla Model 3. And that's how I came to this organization. But the real reason why I'm here is this painting. And it's kind of in a roundabout way, but I want to tell you the story about this. This painting is called The Prologue and the Promise. And if you look at it, I'm going to step back here so you guys on my right can see it. This painting kind of depicts human history, right? So we're over here on the left side, and we have ancient peoples, right? We have the pyramids, we have the Parthenon, we have moving into the Eiffel Tower, the Washington Monument, right, into a more modern day. And you can see on the left side it's dark, right, representing the darkness of the past. But as you move over to the right, bright, shining sun, people on a hill looking at this future city, it's the promise, right? It's the promise of the future. It's where we want to go, it's what we want to do. When I was a little kid, this painting, by the way, if any of you remember the Horizons Pavilion at Epcot back in the early 90s, that's where this was. This was in Epcot, which, right, for those of you who don't remember, Epcot stood for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. It was all focused on the future. What could we be? What could humanity be at our best? And this was the welcome painting. And I remember walking in there and seeing this. I must have been 5 years old, if that. And just being inspired by it and thinking that this is, you know, this is cool. This is really cool. That's what we're going to be. We're going to have floating cities and flying cars. And we're going to have this great, shining example of what humanity can be. And then I grew up. And you know what I got instead? Twitter and Facebook and problems. And you turn on the TV and none of this promise, it hasn't happened. But that's why I'm here, because I want to make this happen. But I can't make this happen so long as all of these things are going on in the world, right? So long as we're emitting more carbon emissions than we've ever emitted in the world. So long as people don't have enough food to eat at night. So long as there are people out there who are being harassed by the people who are supposed to protect them, right? As long as we have all of these issues, we can't get to this. And so to me, this is what sustainability is. It's the future. It's the promise of the future. And that's what I want to enable through Sustainable Tallahassee. That's what I want all of you to help me enabled through Sustainable Tallahassee. But I will briefly talk about how I got here, which is so my story with Sustainable Tallahassee really starts long before I was part of Sustainable Tallahassee. So about 5 years ago, I worked for the Florida Office of Energy, and I worked on electric vehicle programs, right? And I had this program that was down in Orlando called Drive Electric Orlando. It was a really, really innovative thing. It was working with national nonprofit groups, the U.S. Department of Energy, the City of Orlando, and our goal was to rent electric cars to tourists in Orlando. With the idea being they would experience this new thing on vacation, they'd want to do it, they'd want to go home, and they'd be more likely to buy an electric car sometime in the future. As part of that program, before I started that, I'll be fully honest, I had almost no environmental awareness. I was not interested. I, drove a gas-guzzling car. I threw away all my aluminum cans, plastic bottles. I was not an environmentalist by any means, right? I worked for the Office of Energy because those were the guys who hired me out of college. I lucked into it. But I convinced myself, in the same way that I was hoping to convince others, that electric cars are the future. And so when I got a new job, when I got a raise, I was able to afford something like this. I went on the waiting list for the Model 3 for 2 years. I put down money on the day that the Model 3 came out and waited 2 years to get this car. You can see how excited I was.
I love it.
And around the same time, I was both working for FSU and I was a graduate student at FSU, working on how to convince people to adopt electric cars. And I needed to interview EV owners besides myself. And I emailed, I don't even remember who it was, it might have been Tom Clark, the Transportation Committee head, and said who I was, right? I'm working on this project. You guys, Sustainable Tallahassee, seems like you probably have some EV owners. Can I come to one of your committee meetings? And I got in, and it has been snowballing so good. I bring that example up as an inspiration, right? The next me is out there. The next random person who had zero connection to our organization, who's going to show up to one of our committee meetings or one of our events for no particular reason other than they want to be involved, needs to have an opportunity to be president of the organization someday, right? We have to give them the opportunity to be able to do this. And I was lucky enough that I had that opportunity, right? I came in at the right time. I had the right skills and the right assets to be able to do this. And so you can see on the right there, that's me at the very first Sustainable Tallahassee EV Expo, showing off my car, right? Sustainable Tallahassee gave me an opportunity to continue doing the work that I loved outside of my day-to-day job, right? It let me channel my passion and my energy for electric cars in a way that was much more more productive than simply going up to people randomly in parking lots of public and saying, hey, would you like to see my car?
I'm very proud of it. She still does.
So, yeah, no, I still do that. So one of the first things, though, that when I came on board last year was I asked, how is this organization, how is it organized, right? How do we manage our program? So we have the EV program, how does that connect to the board, connect to the executive director, connect to the president, right? How does this work? Because I came from the state government and I came from the university, so we have very clear chains of command, right? We have a hierarchy, a hierarchical structure like this, right? Someone is in charge. And we put this together within the first 6 or so months. We had a lot of conversation about what does this look like, how does this work? And despite having this up here, we kind of gave up. This is not what we look like. This is not how Sustainable Tallahassee works. For the sole reason that nobody in here, other than me to Damien, I can't tell any of you what to do. You're my board director, you don't answer to me, right? Jane doesn't answer to Haley, Jack doesn't answer to Peggy. We're all volunteers, right? Anybody can leave at any time, right? Nobody works here. And so in a hierarchy, though, it requires those kinds of chains of command, right? Someone has to be able to tell the next person in line, do this. This organization needs to do whatever, your part is to do this. Well, if I don't want to do that, I'm not going to, because I have to. Because Sustainable Tallahassee is not a hierarchy, it's a network. It's this kind of amorphous blob with all these various little interest groups that do different things, right? So the core of this is the board of directors here, right? And then we have our executive directors and our executive committee, our fund development committee, our opportunity. Those are the core operational people who are engaged in running this organization. But none of them answer to each other. They're all doing the things that they're doing because they want to do them. Because they're passionate about sustainability, they're passionate about running the organization. We have other people out here in the purple bubbles who are just as passionate about sustainability, but maybe not as passionate about running the organization. And I can't tell them, be passionate about that, right? Just come up with some passion for how to run a nonprofit group. And you can see how all our various things are connected, but they're not connected in a hierarchical way in which we can just tell people what to do. So the goal here, and the reason why we're sitting here today doing strategic doing, is because we're a network and not a hierarchy. And the key challenge for a network is aligning all of these various bubbles, all these various nodes, aligning them all in the same direction. And that's really, really important for sustainability because it's a complex problem. Because if it doesn't matter, I could go out there and if all I ever did was talk to every single person in this town and give everyone a test drive in my car and convince every single one of them to buy an electric car, we would not be sustainable. This would not be a sustainable city or a sustainable society. It takes all the various efforts that we're doing, but we have to align them all in the same way. So that I'm not out there trying to convince someone to buy an electric car, while Lizette is trying to convince them to buy local, while Peggy's trying to give them a reusable bag, but there's no coordination, so we're all just doing our things independently. We want to become more than just the sum of our parts. And we do that by aligning all of our outcomes in the same direction, and strategic doing lets us do that. The other aspect of this is what we call an S-curve. So for those of you who are familiar with the law of diffusion of innovations, this is how a new idea or a new technology takes off, right? So the first couple of people who adopt this, if you imagine, is this quantity on one axis and time on the other. The number of people who are adopting something is very low to me, right? We have a few early adopters. And then over time, more and more people want to do it because the first couple of people have done it. It takes off and accelerates. And then it accelerates more. It's more and more and more people want to do it. But at a certain point, everyone's doing it and it starts to tail off right up here. So we're up here. This shows everything from how a new idea enters a society, how a product enters a market, how an organization, the lifespan of that organization, right? There's not a whole lot of stuff going on real early on here, but then something happens and people get excited and the organization grows and grows and grows and grows until at a certain point, there's not a lot of excitement around the organization anymore. It's spin around, it's kind of old. It's not all that interesting anymore. And it tapers off a little bit. That's where Sustainable Tallahassee is right now. We are at the tail end of one of these S-curves, right? We got about $100,000 a decade ago from the Knight Foundation. We're here. With that $100,000, we hired a full-time executive director, we got an office, we did all these really great programs. We spent all of our money in this part right here. We generated a lot of interest, we got those 2,000 Facebook followers, we were out there doing all kinds of things all the time. But we're kind of old news now because we've just been around. We've just done it all. We need to think about how to do new things. We need to jump to that next S-curve. Find our next thing. We need to reinvent how Sustainable Tallahassee works, how it interacts with the community, and how it can make a difference in this community. And the way that we're going to do that is by taking all of our assets and moving them to the next S-curve through strategic doing. What we're going to do in a few minutes here is going to start off with identifying all of the assets that we have in this room. And assets can be anything. They can be skills, they can be physical assets, they can be social connections, they can be capital assets. Everybody has an asset. Everybody has something that they bring to this table, whether you know it or not. And by getting all of them together, getting all those ideas together, or assets together rather, and coming up with new ideas, new ways to use those assets, we're going to be able to identify that next S-curve, align all of our assets onto that S-curve, and take off and do the next thing. But we need to do this in a very strategic way, so that it's not just the 19 of us here in this room who are going to go out and tell the rest of our organization, here's what we decided, you're going to go do this. Because what if they don't want to? What if we could sit here today and we come up with a strategic plan that said, we're going to go out and get 1,000 new members. Well, who's going to do that? How are we going to do that? What if those 1,000 people don't want to join? What if our people who are currently members don't want to go out and knock on doors and try to get new people? What if they don't want to do that? We need to provide them, and we need to provide our organization and ourselves in this room with high guidance and high participation. Because otherwise what we'll end up with is backroom deals where Damien and I can sit down and decide, here's what we want to do, and we're going to go tell you all what to do. We could have instead chaos, which I would argue is kind of what we have right now, where everyone just does whatever they want without alignment. So the REA committee meets.
Your time, sir, I'm afraid I have to stop you.
Well, as my first executive action, then I'm going to extend my time. See, we're already falling into the backroom deals here. You all had no say in me extending my time, but I'm going to do it.
Set timer, set timer.
You all get the idea, right? High participation, high engagement, everybody gets to have their say, gets to have their assets used, and it helps us move along without anyone telling anyone what to do. And by having everyone have their idea, their passions effectively channeled, we're going to be able to do better than if we just tell people what to do. So, the old way of doing strategic planning here would be kind of what we would typically have done, right? We would all get in this room, we would all sit, we would all talk about what do we want to do, come up with a plan for how we're going to do it, right? So this was thinking. All right, we're done with the plan. Here's the plan. Somebody go do it. What we're going to do instead is we're going to think about some things. We're going to try some things. We're going to figure out what worked with those things or didn't work with those things. We're going to try some new things. Come back, talk about what we learned in that. Think, do, think, do, think, do. That's how strategic doing works. It's an iterative process where we do some things, we figure out what we learned from doing those things, we do the next thing, we figure out what we learned about that, we come back and we just keep doing stuff. And by doing things, we generate momentum, we generate excitement, we generate interest in being a part of this organization. Much more so than saying, here's our grand strategic plan, please someone go do it. And if we don't do it, so strategy answers then two questions. Where are we going, and how are we going to get there? Strategic doing then further breaks that down into four questions. What could we do? What should we do? What will we do? And then what's our 30-30? And 30-30 is a way of thinking about measuring progress and measuring movement towards those goals. So when we talk about 30-30, it's 30 days and 30 days. What did you do in the last 30 days, and what did you learn? What are you going to do in the next 30 days? So today what we're going to do is talk about this question in the context of strategic doing. Imagine Sustainable Tallahassee effectively channeling people's passions and energies for environmental stewardship and economic development. What would that look like? So just think about that for a minute. What would it look like if we were an organization that effectively took everyone's passion and everyone's energy for the environment, for economic development, for community development, for making our community a better place? Imagine that we took every little 5-year-old standing at Epcot looking at that inspiring painting, and we gave them an opportunity to make that future happen. And they did it under the umbrella of Sustainable Tallahassee. What would that look like? What would we have to have in place? So now I'm going to tell you guys how strategic doing, how this workshop works, how we're going to spend the next 2 hours. There's 10 rules for how strategic doing works. They're printed out on these blue cards that you'll have in front of you. I'm going to run through them here real quick, and then we're going to go back and start doing this. So the first thing, before we even start, is we have to create and maintain a safe space for focused conversations. There is no dumb idea in this room. There is no stupid ideas. I won't promise that there are no bad ideas, and I won't promise that I won't have bad ideas. But it's not dumb for me to have had that idea, and it's not bad for me to have spoken that idea out loud. It might not be what we settle on, it might not be what we want to do, but everyone's thoughts and everyone's ideas are valuable in this process. I'm also going to say that my thoughts are not worth more than yours. Just because I'm the president of this organization, just because I'm the executive director, the past president, someone who's been here for the entire decade long, it doesn't matter. Everyone's voice in this process is equal, because you all have to be a part of this process for it to succeed. So along those lines, and this will not happen here, this might happen when we do this for real, for big. Everyone has to respect that process, and everyone has to respect each other. At the back of your packet there are 25 rules of conduct for how we're going to run this. And if I can borrow yours real quick, Jack. So I'm going to go through the first 5 real quick. We're going to pay attention. right? No phones. Everyone put your phone down. We're going to acknowledge others. When someone is speaking, we're not going to be having side conversations. We're not going to do anything else. We're going to be paying attention and acknowledging that they have the floor. We're going to think the best, right? We're not going to think that anyone has some ulterior motive for why they're doing this. We're going to listen, and we're going to be inclusive. I'll let you all read the next 20 on your own. But I'm going to enforce this. If someone is talking too much, I'm going to ask you to please stop. If someone's talking too little, I'm going to try to draw out of you more. If someone is being disruptive, I'm going to ask you to leave. And if we do this for real in January, I have a feeling we're going to have to ask some people to leave. And we need to be ready to do that because it's very important. It's key in this process that everyone's voice is equal. The second step is to frame the conversation around the appreciative question. That's the question that I just posed to you all a minute ago. Imagine Sustainable Tallahassee effectively channeling everyone's passions and
Thank you.
All right, we got the question. So the first step, uncover hidden assets that people are willing to share. We're going to do this in a minute here with all these cards you have in front of you, right? So think about the various things that you bring to the table. What are your skills? What are your passions? What do you have, right? You have an electric car, right? That electric car is an asset, but also your knowledge of the electric car is an asset. We're going to take all those assets, we're going to put them up here on one of these walls, and we're going to link and leverage those assets to create new opportunities. So we're going to combine all of them together to come up with new ideas and new projects for how we could move towards that question. We're then going to rank those opportunities that we come up with, looking for what we call a big easy. The big easy is the project, the goal, that is easiest to do and most impactful. And we're going to do that by everyone voting. Everyone gets to rank every project on those two categories. We're then going to reframe that big easy into an outcome. So from a project to an outcome. What will we see when that project is done? What will we feel? What will the community feel? What will be different? We come up with measurable characteristics that we will see at the end of that project. From there, we're going to take those outcomes and we're going to come up with small Pathfinder projects that take us no more than 120 days that will get us towards that outcome. We're then going to set a 30-30 meeting, which is just going to be our board meeting. Draft a short-term action plan, which is going to be a part of all of the strategic doing action packs we have there together. We're going to take everyone, so I should have mentioned this earlier, everyone please take notes. Take as many notes as you can. In fact, Damien, I was going to ask you and James to be our official knowledge keepers for this. You're going to take the most detailed notes, and between the two of you, hopefully we can capture everything. But everyone also has to take their own notes on their own action packs. Because, right, what Sean hears might be different than what Peggy hears. Might be different from what Damien and Jane hear. And at the end of it, we're all going to take all those action packs, take everyone's notes, take everyone's knowledge, put it all together into an action plan around our Pathfinder project, and then we are going to nudge, connect, and promote relentlessly that project. Right? So I'm going to, as part of this, part of the what will we do step, everyone's going to walk away with something to do. And it's going to take no more than 1 hour of your time over the next 30 days. But I'm going to make sure you do it. I'm going to constantly nudge you, like, hey, have you made progress on that? Sean made progress on that. Jane, have you made your progress on that? And I expect you all to be, hey, Mike, did you do the thing that you said? We're then going to also tell everyone that we possibly can that we're doing this. Relentlessly promote our new idea and our new project. And so this, I'll tell you more about this later. So that's how each doing works in a nutshell. We're going to do this here in a minute. So I'm going to tell you guys also beforehand. Some of you might be wondering why there's a camera in the back. It's not because I want to just go back and watch myself do this. I went to a training seminar for how to run these workshops a few months ago. I have to submit a video of me giving this presentation right now to them to get certification for having done this. So thank you all for allowing me the opportunity both to serve as your board president, but also to do this for my own personal growth. Full disclosure as well, this is the first time that I've done this. This is not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be the world's best strategic doing leader on my first try. So please be patient with me. Please recognize that this is new for me as well. With all of that being said, we're going to start, whoops, I went too far, with uncovering all of our assets. Before we do that, everyone just take a real quick look again. This is our question.